Hey everybody, Phil Rice with PRR Computers, and it is Windows 10 D-Day. So if you're seeing this video, it's either the day of or it's some day after the date when Windows 10 support ended. Now, why am I waiting so late to address this? Well, it's because some of the possibilities and solutions that are available here as far as what to do, that's what this video is about, what to do about it. If you're still on Windows 10, what do we do? What are our options? Well, some of those options only came together like very, very recently, and there's been some uncertainty on exactly how Microsoft is going to handle this. Are they going to stick to the date? From all appearances, it looks like that they have. So now you're on Windows 10, and support is over. So what does that mean? Well, first of all, it is worth noting that the world did not come to an end on this date, and your computer probably did not stop running. And that is what you can expect, is that it's not going to just conk out and stop running. You're not going to immediately be taken over or hacked or anything like that. You're honestly, on today, the day I'm recording this, you're not at any greater risk of that than you were prior to this. Those risks are out there. And they have very little to do with the patching on your computer at this point. Now, as time goes forward, the risk is going to increase. So what do you do? Well, the solution that Microsoft offers, and it is probably the best solution, all things considered, is to just get another computer. But I imagine that if that was your inclination, you probably have already done that by now, right? So, but that solves all the problems. First of all, it gets you on some new hardware. It gets you with a new warranty for your computer, and it gets you on Windows 10, the latest one, right? But that's not feasible for everybody, and for businesses where you've got a lot of computers, that's maybe even less feasible. You know, that's a significant expense. So that is one thing that you can do, is just plan on let's get these Windows 10 computers replaced. Now, why would you want to do that as opposed to what you did back when Windows 7/8 went out of support? And you'll notice everybody pretty much just upgraded to Windows 10. At least everyone that wanted to, that didn't want to stay on Windows 7. They upgraded to Windows 10. Now, why is that? Well, the reason is because the system requirements, the hardware required to run Windows 10, was not very different from the requirements to run Windows 7. In fact, in some cases, you could take a Windows 7 machine and install Windows 10 on it, and it would actually run better. That's not the case with Windows 11. Windows 11 has a significant increased hardware requirement, not just in terms of power, but there are certain security features built into the hardware of motherboards and things like that, that Windows 11 mandates, or at least that's what we're told. I'll get into what I mean by that a little bit later in the video. So it's not quite so simple. First of all, there's two regards. If you upgrade your computer to Windows 11, or first of all, if you buy a new computer, you've solved all these problems. And if you can afford to do that, and that's in the cards for you, then do that. And then just turn off the video and go and get the new computer, and you're done. Your problem is solved. And if you need help transferring files from the old computer to the new one, and you're in my local area, I should be able to help you with that, or I can recommend someone who can if I'm not available to do it. Okay, so that's a possibility. But let's assume that you're not going to do that. So what are the other options? One is to upgrade your computer from, like, just to do an in-place upgrade of the software from Windows 10 to Windows 11. And if your computer is capable of doing this, then if you go into Windows Update, you will see that as a choice, and it will be prompting you, hey, upgrade now to Windows 11. And if you've been putting that off, your computer's been telling you that you're eligible to do that, and you've been putting it off, it's time to stop putting it off, frankly. Go ahead and do that. And that's usually a self-service thing. You don't need to pay someone like me to help with something like that. So if your computer is offering you that choice, that's a really good option. Now, I'll warn you, the computer may run a little bit slower on Windows 11 because it does require more out of your hardware. However, all things considered, security in particular, it's worth it. If you need more power, then get a new computer. That's really those are the choices there, right? However, there's probably a good many of you that your computer either doesn't offer that at all, or it tells you explicitly your computer doesn't have the requirements to run Windows 11. That's frightfully common. There are, from what I understand, tens of millions of computers that's the case for. So what can you do? Well, if your computer says it's ineligible, then obviously we steer back around to suggestion number one. The one option is to replace it, right? But there is a process called Fly by 11. And if you're pretty technically savvy, it's something you could look up and do yourself. In fact, I'll include a link to it in the description of this video. So this Fly by 11 process allegedly can bypass... The nuts and bolts of it is that even though Windows 11 to be offered through the normal Windows Update channel, even though it says you have to have these requirements for Windows 11 to even run, somebody found out that that's not the case. And actually, you can still run Windows 11 most of the time on a computer that says it can't. So conspiracy theorists will have a lot of fun with that one, I'm sure, for many years. But there's a process that is a user-created process called Fly by 11 that can bypass those processes and then do a Windows 11 upgrade as if your computer was eligible. Now, there's some risks with that. If you're going to engage in something like that, you want to back up your files, because if something doesn't quite go right, you could lose some data there. You don't want to risk that. So you want to make sure you back up your important stuff before you even attempt it. Or if you're going to hire someone like me to do that, it's not a cheap process. It's very labor intensive. It requires some downtime on your part and some significant expense. It's something that's kind of outside the scope of normal contract type work that I do for people, because it's a special process. So if you need help with that, contact me. But I want to make sure you know the risks. There are risks that something could go wrong and leave the computer in a state that it's not particularly usable. And there's also risks that the performance on the other side of that, the grass is maybe not going to be so much greener there, right? That there may, even though these restrictions that Microsoft has put in place are able to be bypassed, it doesn't mean that they're not there for a good reason. And nobody really knows long term what the effect of that will be. So it's kind of a risk. And you'll probably end up paying a third to half the cost of a brand new computer just to pay someone to get that upgrade done. So that's worth considering, but it's an option. Now, the other is that there is actually a way to pay for extended support for Windows 10 from Microsoft. It's something that you purchase from Microsoft. They've not made it very easy at all. In fact, they've not made it possible for someone like me, for a small business like me, to offer it as like a product that you could purchase through me. This is something you'd have to purchase directly from Microsoft on each individual computer you wanted to do it on. Thinking mostly for the business people if you've got multiple computers, right? You have to do it on each individual computer one at a time and do it with like a credit card type of thing, right? But for home users, the price for extended support for another 12 months is $30. And for business computers, it's $60. And that gets you 12 more months where they'll continue sending you security updates through Windows Update. It's once you've done it, it's done. Okay? You can then, a year from now, or from whenever you do that, you can renew for an additional 2 years using the same process. You have to do it 1 year at a time. Each year, that price, $30 for home, $60 for business, it doubles. So obviously there's some built-in incentive there for you really only want to do that if you have to. You know, if you are really just in love with Windows 10 or just have to stay on it for some reason, then that's the way that would look, okay? So if you're one of my business customers or one of my home customers on a contract, that's something that I could assist you with, but I can't do it for you because of the way that the purchase thing works with Microsoft. But I could help you through that. So if you need help with that, let me know. Now, there's a little secret here, and this kind of falls into that fly-by-11 category of it's something that people found out on their own. It's not something Microsoft has said. But I have a colleague who actually tested the implementing of the extended support for Windows 10, and he followed the steps to do it and was never actually prompted to pay anything. So it's possible that you would go to do that upgrade or that extended support process and you end up getting it for free. Now, who knows how long that's going to last, right? That's probably a mistake or an oversight, or maybe that was only true before D-Day. But it's something to keep in mind. But you figure that your worst case is if you just want to get another year before you have to replace your computer or make a bigger decision like that, then it's going to cost you $30 if you're on a home computer or $60 if you're on a business one. Now, I'm not sure how they determine the difference between home and business in that context, but I'm going to assume that it's if you have the home version of Windows 11, then it'll probably be $30. And if you've got the Pro version of Windows 11 or the Enterprise, then it's going to be $60. So that's something to keep in mind. It's something you could very likely do for yourself. I'll show you here on screen. They are going to offer this right through the Windows Update screen, and there might even be a pop-up notification to let you know about it. But it's going to look just like this, and you can just click Enroll Now and go through the process. And you should have your credit card ready because you're probably going to have to pay for it. But there's a possibility that you won't. So could be worth a try. And again, if you're someone who's under a contract with me, either under the Home Guard program, or if you're a managed services customer of mine, it's something I can assist with. I can't do it all for you. We'll need to coordinate together on that and have you put in a credit card at the right time or whatever. And it is one PC at a time. There's no mass distribution for this kind of thing. So anyway, those are the options for D-Day. Now there's one more option that you at least should be aware of that you can do. It's just not one that I would personally recommend, and that is you could do nothing. You could just do nothing. And each day that goes by, there's going to be a greater risk of compromise of the computer. Again, it's not something that I'd recommend, but I also think it's not a sky is falling kind of moment either. And I say this having witnessed the changeover, the expiration of support for Windows XP, before that Windows 2000, after that Windows 7, Windows 8. The same is true. There's a lot of Y2K kind of panic that gets spread around, and Microsoft, they help spread that panic. You know, they've got their own incentive of why they want you to do one or the other of these things. They're gonna make money on any of these solutions almost, right? So, but the truth is, it's not an immediate, crazy end of the world thing, but it's a risk you need to be aware of. So you could do nothing, or you could wait a little bit. It's not what I'd recommend, because if there's a hole in the security of the operating system itself, then it doesn't even really matter if you have antivirus protection. That could be a problem. And usually those problems are made manifest when you're interacting with the outside world on the computer. In other words, web surfing, visiting websites, that kind of thing, or through your email. That's where you'll get exposed to those things, and these security holes that are going to be, going to open up on the system as it goes unpatched. Those are going to become a greater and greater concern. Now, I know people who are still running a Windows XP computer, believe it or not. I know people who are still running Windows 7 computers, and they've had no problem. That doesn't mean that those were a good idea. Okay? So you probably should do something. These are what the options are for you. If there's some of them that you need my assistance with, let me know, and I'll include some kind of do-it-yourself links down here, including in the description. I'm going to include a link to a video where a colleague of mine explains how that subscribing for extended support, but it ended up being free. He'll show you exactly what that looked like and how that looked, so you would know what to expect there if you want to give that a try. Okay? So that's Windows 10 D-Day and the days after. So hopefully this helps clarify the situation, and I hope that you have a great day. Thank you.